This conference will now be recorded.
So before I start, I would like to know, is everyone able to practice whatever has been discussed? Let it be creation of EC2 instance and creating additional volume and attaching the additional volumes to that EC2 instance and mounting, creating a snapshots, migrating that snapshot from one location to other location. Hope you are able to do that. If you are not able to do that, refer the video carefully. Maybe here and there you have done small mistakes. Refer the video carefully 1 or 2 times. If you are still not able to do that, kindly let me know. I'll try to see what mistake you have done. Okay? If you observe the video carefully, you can do that. But still you are having some problem, let me know in the Skype group so that I will see where exactly you have done the mistake. As I already told, one class is related to another class. Not only AWS, you take anything, you take any class, whatever we are discussing from day one is related to other. At the end of the day, are we going to use all these tools together, be it a shell scripting, be it a Linux commands, be it a Git, Nexus, SonarCube, Jenkins, Docker, AWS, or Kubernetes, whatever it is. At the end of the day, we are going to use all these tools in the DevOps process. Don't by heart any command. Don't by heart any command. Don't by heart like step one. Click on this button, click on this radio box, execute this command. Don't learn that way. Understand what is the whole purpose of that. It is out of topic today, but I want to give an overview how we can focus on the course, right? So why we started first Linux and shell scripting, just so that you can by heart your commands. For that one we started. So why we started Linux, why we started shell scripting? Because are we going to deal with Linux servers? Most of the cases, what type of environment we are going to use to deploy our applications? Most of the cases, Linux environment. So if you are using Linux environments, Linux operating system, without knowing Linux commands, will you be able to interact or manage or operate Linux operating systems? No. So that's why we started Linux. Linux, some commands, how to interact with Linux, how to check the process, how to create directories, how to manage permissions, how to see active ports, all those things we discussed. Why we learned shell scripting? Because as part of DevOps, you need to automate some manual things. You need to automate some manual things, manual tasks. By writing shell scripting, will I able to automate whatever I am trying to do manually? Can I perform some operations from that script? Can I execute that script so that it will automate something? That can be anything. That can be installing a software, that can be taking a backups, that can be deploying application also. By writing a shell script, can I automate something which I am trying to do manually? That's why we learned shell scripting. So that is shell scripting. Suppose you got a requirement in your project, you want to do something, you need some kind of a scripting language. That can be shell scripting or Python scripting or Go language, Go scripting. But since it is Python and Go is completely programmatic languages, you need to know the programming language. So if you know shell scripting, you can manage with that. So that's why we learned shell scripting. Now we learned about GitHub. What do we do with GitHub? SCM, source code management. So Do we need some central system where every developer can contribute their code, get the code, updated code, and sync their code? So everyone need a central location where they can maintain the code and history, version history of that source code, what changes has been done in that code, who has done those changes. We need a central location. So developers is going to commit the code, but as a DevOps engineer, do we also should know what is Git, what is GitHub, how to create branches, what is pull request, how to merge. As a DevOps engineer also, you may also commit some code. Suppose you are writing some kind of a shell scripting. You are writing some kind of a shell scripting. You are writing some kind of a Ansible playbooks or Jenkins files, Jenkins pipelines, or Docker files, Docker Compose files, or Kubernetes files. As a DevOps engineer, you should also start committing the code, and you should be responsible for doing the administration. So that's why we learned Git, GitHub. Then we learned about the build tools. We learned about artifactories. We learned about artifactories, artifacts. And we learned about source code quality management. Source code quality management tool. What is that? We learned SonarQube, right? So artifactory tools like what? Nexus, JFrog, etc. This build tools like Ant. Ant is very old. No one is using Ant. No one is using Ant. So Maven, Gradle. If it is a Python, what is the Python like dependency management system, kind of a build system for Python? NPM. Sorry, Node. I am talking about Node. For Node, NPM. For Python, you have a PyBuilder or pip, something like this. So these are the build tools. Why do we need build tools? To build applications, to manage the dependencies of applications. Do we need build tools to build the application packages and manage the dependencies of that application packages? We need a build tools. So that for that purpose we learned this one. What is the whole purpose of Nexus and JFrog? To store the build artifacts. To store the build artifacts. Sometimes in the interview they will ask, what is the difference between GitHub and Nexus, or GitHub and Nexus? So can't we maintain build artifacts in GitHub? Are we going to maintain build artifacts in GitHub, like your jar files, var files, like that? No. So GitHub is only source code. In Nexus is only build package. In Nexus, are you going to maintain your source code as is in Nexus? No, that is just a package. It will maintain the package, compiled version of your source code. Artifacts. Now this is for what purpose? Code quality check. Now we learned about application servers and web servers. Application servers and web servers. So web server. What is web server? Like HTTPD, Nginx. This is web servers. HTTPD, Nginx. Using web servers, I can only host a static web application. Will I able to host a dynamic web application like Java based or Python based applications? Dynamic? No. So this is web server. Do I need application servers to host dynamic web applications? If it is a Java based application, do I need application server software like Tomcat, JBus, Wildfly? These are application servers. Using these softwares, Can I deploy my Java application using this Tomcat software, Wildfly software, Java-based web applications or enterprise applications? Yes. Can I use this as a load balancing these application servers, these web servers? Can I use this web servers also as a load balancer to load balance these application servers? Yes. Now, after this, we learned Jenkins. Why Jenkins? To integrate all these things together. I mean to say, whenever there is a change in the source code, any developer modified the code, do I need to create a application packages using builder tools? Do I need to push that package to the Artifactory tool? If required, do I need to do the source code quality whenever there is a change in the code, if required? Then, do I need to deploy that application in application servers like Tomcat or JBoss? So, to continuously integrate whenever there is a change in the source code, to continuously deploy whenever there is a change in the source code, can I use tools like CI/CD tool like Jenkins? Continuous integration and continuous deployment. That is why we learned Jenkins. We learned bits and pieces, but at the end of the day, do I need to use all these tools as part of my DevOps lifecycle, DevOps process? Yes. If you attended the sessions like bits and pieces, whenever you have a mood to attend the class, let's assume you have very good interest and you have attended Linux and shell scripting without miss, but you have missed GitHub, you missed build tools, then you directly joined for SonarQube. Then we'll be able to understand whatever we are using, whatever we are doing on these tools. You can't understand what we are doing. At the end of the day, all are interrelated. If you learn bits and pieces, if you join the classes whenever you have a mood, that is not going to work out. Lot of confusions will come. You will lose the track, and at the end of the day, you lose the interest also. But if you are continuously attending, continuously practicing, you will have a very good enthusiasm and very interesting topics also. But if you lose the track, if you join bits and pieces, then it is impossible. That's why we are saying attend all the classes. It is not like a school. Even though you are not attending, I am not going to scold, because you are a professional, I am a professional. You are not a school kid to keep you in track, but you will lose the track, you will lose the interest, you will lose the commitment. That's why we are saying attend all the class, practice. Now we are using Jenkins, but before all these things, first of all, do I need compute, storage, network for all these things to be hosted? Do I need some server where I have to install, configure Jenkins? Do I need some server, storage, network where I can deploy Tomcat or JBoss? Do I need some server, network, storage to install web servers like HTTPD, Nginx? Do I need some server where I can install this SonarQube, Artifactory tools like this? That is infrastructure. But again, as I already told, as a DevOps engineer, are you going to work on each and every tool, whatever I am talking about, infrastructure, build and deployment? It's very rare. If you are in a small startup company, you may get an opportunity to work on each and every corner of the DevOps process. But if you go for a standard companies, MNCs, there will be a separate team for each area. There will be a separate team for managing the infrastructure. There is a separate team for only CI/CD, like that. But it is good to know, because we never know. Suppose if you hide for infrastructure team. So do you need to manage required server, storage, network for your applications? If you are directly into infrastructure, yes, it is good to know. So infrastructure, there are two things. Infrastructure, there are two things, as I already told. What type of infrastructures? We have a on-prem infrastructure and cloud-based infrastructure. Cloud infrastructure. Cloud. So we already discussed what is on-prem, what is the challenges or drawbacks we have with on-prem, what is cloud. In the respect to the cloud, we have AWS, Azure, GCP, all those things. Now, suppose I want to configure Nexus, my own Nexus software. Can I create a required computing storage for that Nexus server in cloud and configure that Nexus in that cloud infrastructure? Like EC2, can I create one EC2 instance with whatever capacity I need, with whatever storage I need? If I want to periodically take a backups, if you want to periodically take a backups of your Nexus working directory also, can I mount my Nexus working directory with some additional EBS volume? Can I periodically take a snapshot of Nexus artifactory storages also? Yes. If you want to create a server for SonarQube, you can do that. If you want to create a server for Tomcat, you can do that. Let's say you have some databases also. If you need some database softwares like MySQL, Mongo, Postgres, Oracle, Couchbase, like this, there are a lot of databases. Your application is using databases to store the data. So if required, can I create an infrastructure in cloud and configure these databases, manage the storage for these databases and network for the databases in cloud? Yes. If required, you can create a EC2 instance directly. In that EC2 instance, can I install Postgres or can I install Mongo? Can I install MySQL the way you are installing Tomcat, the way you are installing Nexus? If required, can I install these softwares also in EC2 instance? So if required, can I mount this database directory with some additional EBS with that server, periodically take a backups of those database disks? If something is corrupted with your database disk, will I able to recover the database data using snapshots again? Yes. So that is the whole purpose of doing this. If I don't want to manage database on my own in cloud, do I have services altogether, databases also as a services? I don't want to go with infrastructure. I need a database as a service. Do I have that services in cloud? Yes. So just to give an example, RDS. What is RDS in AWS? Relational database service. So if I go with RDS, do I need to manually install database? Do I need to manage the high availability of database, backups of database, durability of the database, all those things myself? No. So who will do that? That will be taken care by AWS itself. So why I bring this topic here? Because you are going off track. The people who ever attended the DevOps session, you are going off track. You are learning bits and pieces, or you are joining whenever you have a mood to attend, like a movie. So like you are attending like a movie, like whenever you are interested, you are doing. So it is not like bits and pieces, guys. You need to know all these things. At the end of the day, one is related to other. If you learn bits and pieces, it is not easy. I hope at least you are clear why I bring this topic now, so that you are good. What is the best way of learning? Don't by heart commands. Don't by heart. Commands is important. Commands is important. I am not saying commands are not important, but without knowing what is the whole purpose of the tool, how we are using the tool, how we can use the tool with other tool, without knowing, if you are only good at installation of software, only at commands, will you become a DevOps engineer, software engineer? If you by heart something, if you know only installation, no. You need to know the tool. I agree commands as important, but at the same time, you need to know why, how we are using that tool. At the same time, if you want to get the better understanding of all these tools, what is the only solution? Practice, assignments. Practice and assignments are very, very important. Even though you are attending, if you practice more, if you do the assignments again and again, then you know what is DevOps, what is DevOps life cycle, why we are using SonarQube, why we are using Nexus, why we are using Git, why we are using web servers, why we are using application servers, why we are using database servers, why cloud. All these things you can easily understand and explain the DevOps life cycle in the interview also. But again, I am repeating, even though you are using lot of tools, there will be a different teams, but you should know the understanding, good understanding of that tool also. Okay, let's continue with actual. Let's focus on wherever we left. So my suggestion is be on track, attend all the sessions and practice at the same time, so that you will have a lot of interest also to learn. Do the practice also. If you attend bits and pieces, if you are practicing also bits and pieces, you will lose the track, you will lose the interest also. Okay, let's continue. So yesterday we were discussing about EBS and also EFS. These are block storages and file storage. Now there is a one more storage called S3. What is this S3? Simple storage service. Simple storage service. It's an object store. So as I already told, do I need to mount this object store with any server to read and write the data? Not required. So you can read and write the data to this object store from anywhere, So each object is nothing but what? Data, file. Each object which we are going to upload to object store like S3 will have unique object ID and also endpoint. What is that endpoint? URL. So each object which we are going to upload to the S3 will have an ID and URL. Using this URL, can I access from anywhere, like any application also, or from any system also, using by referring this URL from any application or from any system also? Yes. You no need to mount to S3. But without mounting, how can I upload files? How can I upload files to S3? In AWS, we have S3. In Azure, similar to this, in AWS, we have a S3. In Azure, we have one more service called blob storage. blob storage. So this is in Azure. This blob storage is like S3 in Azure. Now in GCP, there is a service called GCS, GCS buckets. GCS buckets we call it as. Here we call it as S3 buckets. Here we call it as GCS buckets, Google Cloud Storage buckets in GCP. Like this, every cloud is having these type of things. Now, here, how can I upload here? We call it as a S3 bucket. S3 bucket. Why we are calling as S3 bucket? What is bucket? In general, why we will use buckets? In general, guys. In our home also we will use buckets. To store something, to carry something. Can I use buckets to store water or some goods also? To carry something, to hold something. So this S3 bucket, we are calling it as a bucket. So what S3 will store, what S3 will hold, basically data files. So we need to create a S3 bucket first. And how can I create a bucket and how can I upload the files to the bucket, right? As I already told, AWS service can be managed using what and all ways? GUI, API, CLI, and other developmental tools. Tools like CloudFormation or Terraform, or I can use Boto also, or Boto script. So AWS services can be managed in many ways. So what is GUI? What is the full form of GUI? Graphical user interface. Graphical user interface. What is the full form of API? Application Programming Interface. CLI, Command Line Interface. So AWS service, not only S3. Suppose I need to create server, storage, network, load balancers, RDS, anything. Is it possible for me to create using APIs also? Is it possible for me to create using CLIs also? Or is it possible for me to create using CloudFormation or Terraform? This we call it as a infrastructure as a code. This we call it as a infrastructure as a code. Not only S3, right? Any other things also. So whatever we are using here, what is this? Can I call this as a GUI, graphical user interface? But in the background, is it invoking APIs internally? This GUI is invoking APIs internally, whatever is exposed by AWS. But do we need to worry about that? How it is working in the background, how it is created? No, we are just using GUI. So that will be taken care by AWS itself. Now, I can create using this also. I can go to services, I can go to S3, any service I can manage. I can go to S3 like this. And here it will show me whatever buckets I have. S3 buckets I have here. If you see, as of now, do I have any buckets available here? No. Now, S3 is a global service, which means can I access the files in S3 in any region, any location? S3 is a global service, which means I have some files in S3 bucket. Will I able to access those files in any region, any data center, any location? Yes. It's a global service. We can access from anywhere, any location. But when we are creating a bucket, does that bucket will be created in some region, some data center? We can access from anywhere, but it will store the files. It will maintain the files in some location. So that's why the moment I click on S3, here it switched to global. It's a global service. But when I'm creating a bucket, do I need to define under which region that bucket has to be created, that storage has to be created? Yes. Even though I created in Mumbai region, will I able to access that in any region, any server, any location? Yes. That is what the meaning of global service. Now I can create using GUI also, or if required, can I invoke APIs? Suppose I'm a developer, Java developer or Node.js developer. Can I write a Java code or Node.js code by invoking APIs, whatever is exposed by AWS, to manage infrastructure using APIs also directly, using code also, APIs? AWS is offering APIs. AWS APIs. So they're offering APIs in the background. So by invoking these APIs, whatever is offered by AWS, right, will I able to write a code, and with that code also I can create EC2 instances or S3 buckets or storages, whatever it is? Yes. AWS is offering APIs, application programming interfaces, but you need to write a code like a Java code, Python code, Node.js code to invoke those APIs. What is CLI? What is AWS CLI? Command line interface. So by using AWS CLI, can I execute some commands like this to manage AWS command, S3 service? This MB is one option. Suppose I have installed AWS CLI. I have installed AWS CLI in one of my server, and I have granted the permissions. I have configured AWS CLI with permissions. If I execute something like this, is it going to create a S3 bucket in your account? Just to give an example, is it going to create a S3 bucket in your account, something like this with this name? Yes. If required, can I copy files also to S3, something like this from your server? Suppose you have installed S3, this AWS CLI in your system, and using that AWS CLI, will you able to copy some file from your system to the S3 bucket without mounting this S3 bucket with your system? Using CLI also, will I able to copy files? Using API also, will I able to copy files to the S3 bucket? Using GUI also, can I upload files to S3 bucket? Using GUI also, will I able to upload files to S3 bucket? Using API also, will I able to upload files? Suppose one of the application developer, one of the application is using S3 to maintain some data, some files. So whenever we are uploading files from UI, whenever we are uploading some files from UI, if application is using S3, does the application can invoke S3 APIs to store those files in S3 bucket and get the files from S3 bucket to your application or uploading to S3 also? Can I use that as a storage for my application by invoking APIs in the background as a developmental task? As a developer, can we write APIs to read and write the files from S3 for your applications? As a developer, yes. We can do it using CLI also, something like this. And what is this CloudFormation, Terraform, or Boto? Boto or Boto 3 is a Python SDK. software development kit. That SDK stands for software development kit. Now Boto and Boto 3 is a Python SDK. So using Python, this Boto packages, by writing a Python script also using this Boto libraries, if required, will I able to manage my infrastructure using Python script also by using this Boto libraries? Yes. Guys, if you remember when Bhaskar sir might have explained Ansible dynamic inventory, if you remember, Bhaskar sir has explained Ansible dynamic inventory. Using this Boto or Boto 3, am I able to get the list of servers available in my account using this Boto? You are using some plugin. You are using that plugin. That plugin is internally using what? That plugin is internally using what? Boto. That EC2 plugin you are using, but that EC2 plugin is internally using Boto script. So that's why, if you remember, did you guys install the Boto library in that Ansible server before you are using that dynamic inventory? Yes. That is just an example. Suppose I want to periodically stop my server, start my servers. Can I write some Boto script which can stop my servers? Can I execute that Boto script using cron jobs? Like every night 12 o'clock I want to stop some servers. Can I write a Boto script where I can define which server to stop? Can I execute that Boto script as a cron job? Or can I execute that Boto script using Jenkins pipeline also, scheduled cron triggers in Jenkins? I can maintain that Boto script in SCM and I can create one Jenkins pipeline. I can trigger that Jenkins pipeline every night 12 o'clock. So if that Jenkins is triggering that pipeline and that pipeline is executing that Boto script, is it going to stop the server if you have written something like that? Yes. So based on your use case, you can use anything. This is SDK, software development kit. But if you want to use SDK, do you need to be a developer, Python developer with Boto background? Without knowing Python programmatic language, you can't work on this area. Now, we have other developmental tools like CloudFormation, Terraform, like this. So Terraform, what is Terraform? Infrastructure as a code. Infrastructure as a code. Now, this Terraform is going to use what syntax, what language? HashiCorp. What is that language? HashiCorp language, HCL, HashiCorp language. But is it a complete programmatic language? It is a declarative format. It is not a programmatic language. You declare what you need. So using Terraform, I can create my infrastructure as a code, because in the real time, you have a lot of servers to be created. You have a lot of environments to be created, like dev environment. For dev environment, you need to create a networks, storage, servers, load balancers, databases. And for production environment also, you want to create networks, servers, load balancers, databases, like this in my cloud infrastructure. So will it be simple to create lot of infrastructure using GUI? What is the problem of using GUI to create an infrastructure for whatever environment I want to create, like dev environment related servers, networks, load balancers, databases? What is the problem of using GUI? It is nothing to do with S3, guys. I am just taking outside. I am talking about outside of S3 now. So this, whatever I am explaining, it is nothing to do with S3. So what is the problem of GUI? It's a manual task, time taken. Will it be very well with a very less time? Will I able to create? No. And also since it's a manual task, will it be leading to human errors? Suppose I am creating one network, I miss to create some security groups or route tables. I miss that. Since it's a human, right? It may lead to the human errors. Maybe you are creating infrastructure properly in dev. When you are going for a production, maybe you might have missed to create some security group in the prod. You might have missed to create some route table in the prod, something like that. Will it cause to the errors? Do you have a consistent infrastructure, consistent environments? If you do it manually, no. So that is where this infrastructure as a code comes into picture. You can do it using Boto also, but it is completely programmatic language. So no one will use that because you need a programmers, developers, cloud developers, cloud developers, not application developers, cloud developers. Now, if I go with this kind of a tools, cloud formation, this is in which format we are going to define. This is one service in AWS, but we are not covering this one. It is part of AWS solution architect program. So it is going to define, we can define infrastructure in which format, what needs to be created. In cloud formation, I can use YAML, YML format. If I use Terraform, can I create an infrastructure using Terraform, HCL, HashiCorp language? Do I need to be a developer to create an infrastructure using Terraform? Do I need to be good in Python, shell scripting like that? No. But internally this Terraform, is it internally going to use APIs again? You are not invoking APIs directly, but internally it is going to use APIs. Terraform. So using Terraform scripts, will I able to create provision? Provision in the sense create. Will I able to provision and manage my infrastructure using Terraform? Whether it's a AWS cloud, Azure cloud, GCP cloud, does Terraform supports plugins or resources for Azure, AWS, GCP, any cloud? Yes. So you can use the Terraform script. Ansible. What is Ansible? We already discussed Ansible. Ansible is what type of tool? Is it a infrastructure as a code tool? No. It's a configuration management tool. Using Ansible also we can create an infrastructure. Using Ansible also we can create an infrastructure. There are modules available in Ansible, but it is a stateless. Suppose if I execute same Ansible playbook 10 times, is it going to create an infrastructure 10 times? Because that Ansible is not going to maintain any state of the infrastructure. There are modules available. There are modules available in Ansible to create an infrastructure, but it's a stateless when it comes to infrastructure. So we are not going to use Ansible for provisioning the infrastructure. I can use Ansible to provision the, I can use Terraform to provision the infrastructure. I can use Terraform to create the infrastructure. But once that infrastructure is ready, if required, can I configure that infrastructure using Ansible? By using Ansible, can I connect to that infrastructure and install required softwares in that infrastructure, whatever is created by Terraform? Suppose you want to create Tomcat, you want to install Tomcat, or you want to install some software. So can I use that Ansible as a configuration management tool to configure the infrastructure? Whether that infrastructure is created manually using GUI, whether that infrastructure is created using Terraform, that doesn't matter. So Terraform is a infrastructure as a code. Ansible is what type of tool? Ansible is what type of tool? It's ideally for configuration management. Configuration management. Suppose you are already having that configurations in your servers. Do I really need to use Ansible to again configure? Suppose if I'm going for a platform as a service in AWS. Suppose I'm going for a platform as a service in AWS. Suppose I'm going for EKS. So I will get a platform, Kubernetes platform together. So do I really need Ansible to install Docker, Kubernetes related stuff in those servers if I directly go for EKS? Because that Docker Kubernetes is already configured there. Do I really need Ansible if I'm going for a platforms as a service in cloud again? Not required. So these are tools, different tools. Based on your requirement, you are going to use. Even though we are discussing all these things, are you going to use all these things in every day, your day-to-day life? No, based on the requirement, based on the use case, you are going to use. Okay. Hope you are clear. What is what, at least now. Now, let's consider, suppose you are working on infrastructure side. Suppose you are working on infrastructure side, you created a Terraform scripts. If required, can I maintain these Terraform scripts in a separate repo, in an infrastructure repositories in GitHub? Can I trigger this execution also from Jenkins if I am maintaining my infrastructure scripts, Terraform scripts in a separate repo? Because this is not your source code. Are you going to maintain your Terraform scripts as part of your application repositories? No. So you will maintain in a separate repositories, GitHub repositories, infrastructure related, only these Terraform scripts. And can I use Jenkins again if required? Whenever the guys who is working on infrastructure, they have modified some Terraform scripts to create some additional infrastructure or to modify existing infrastructure. They modified the Terraform scripts. So can I trigger that automatically by creating a pipeline for these Terraform repositories in my Jenkins if required again? Yes. So learn the concept in this way, guys. Step 1 do this, step 2 do this won't help you, because once you get into a project, you never know in which step you will stuck, in which area you are going to work. So understand the concepts and apply those concepts as per the requirement. It is not like in the sequence whatever we are explaining you are going to work like that, or in the sequence we are executing the commands you are going to again execute that one. You will have a requirement. Terraform supports Jenkins integration also, definitely. Now you have a GitHub. If you know understanding, you have a GitHub, you have a repository like this. Here I have all my Terraform files. Now in Jenkins server, can I install Terraform software in my Jenkins server? Will it anything stop me to install Terraform in my Jenkins server? Can I install Terraform software in Jenkins server? We can install. Now this Jenkins server is attached with permissions to AWS. Suppose this Jenkins server has configured with some access key and secret key, or this Jenkins server is attached with one IAM role which has permissions to create the infrastructure resources. Now if I write a pipeline, in that pipeline I am cloning this script. I already have a Terraform in my pipeline. If I do something like this, Terraform apply on these scripts in my pipeline, I already have a Terraform installed in Jenkins. I granted permissions to manage infrastructure for Jenkins. AWS permissions I have granted using IAM. I will explain that what is IAM. If I have done like this, can I write a pipeline to execute this command via pipeline? Yes. Jenkins is one tool that can be used to run any script, any commands by installing required softwares, by using required plugins. That you can directly install software, or you can use some plugins also. You can run any script, guys, not only Java, .NET, Python, Terraform. If required, can I trigger Ansible playbooks also via pipeline? If I maintain Ansible playbooks in my GitHub, by installing Ansible in Jenkins server, can I execute Ansible playbook commands via pipeline scripts also, if required? Yes. Learn that way. Don't learn like bits and pieces. That won't help you. You are thinking Jenkins cannot work with Ansible, Jenkins cannot be used with Terraform, like that. So each tool is used for different purpose. Can I use all those tools together as part of my pipelines by installing respective softwares in the Jenkins, or by using respective plugins in the Jenkins? Yes. Okay. Hope you are clear. Today I went out of topic, but very important also at that same time. Now let me come back to S3. Now S3 buckets I can create using GUI, using API, CLI, or any other developmental script also. Now I am going to create using GUI. So this is GUI. So I went to S3, create bucket. As of now, I don't have any buckets. I'll first create a bucket. So I am giving some bucket name like this, test. So what is all these things I will explain later. I am going with the default. What is this block public access? What is versioning in S3? I will explain later. I'm just creating a bucket with this name. In which region I want to create a bucket? As of now, as per your requirement. Maybe you want to create in Mumbai region, you can select Mumbai. Now, I'm with the default options I'm creating. I will explain what is this block public access, what is this versioning later. I'm just clicking on this create bucket. So what it is trying to say? Bucket name already exists, but I don't have a bucket with this name, right? I don't have any bucket first of all, and I don't have a bucket with this name. Why it is throwing error? Because S3 buckets name, S3 bucket name should be unique across AWS. It should be unique globally. So if someone has already have a bucket with this name, can I reuse this name again? No. So someone has already used this bucket, so I'm not able to use. So let me give some unique name. Maybe let's say some name. But in real time, what will be the names you will use? Your application names. Your application name. For what purpose you are using, for which application you are using, you are going to use that name for your buckets. For now, let me give something like this. December MT batch, Mithun technology batch, something like this, 1, 2, 3. Now I am creating with this name. Will you able to create with this name again in your AWS account if you want to practice? No. So I'm giving something like this, give unique name. The bucket is created now. This is my S3 bucket. In which region as of now that storage is there for that bucket? Mumbai. But even though it's in Mumbai, will I able to access the objects files in this S3 bucket in any location, anywhere? Yes. Now, when it comes to the interview perspective, they will ask one question, interview questions, right? How many S3 buckets can be created in AWS account by default? In AWS by default. or AWS account by default. So how many S3 buckets can be created in AWS account by default? As of now, that is 100 buckets. Like this is one bucket. Similarly, can I create another 99 buckets for your requirements? Yes, but it's a soft limit. What is the meaning of soft limit? It's a soft limit, which means it can be increased. But who can increase? I need to raise a support case. I need to raise a support case with AWS. I need to create a support case with AWS so that I can increase. Now, if you see here, service quotas. There is one option here, service quotas. So here I can see the limits for all these things. Suppose this is the default quotas. Like this, we have some quotas. If I go to S3, right? If I go to S3, AWS S3, I can search here, AWS S3. They will give the quotas. They will give the default quotas. So if you see, what is, how many S3 buckets can be created by default? If you see, buckets, 100. So adjustable, yes. What is the meaning of adjustable, yes? By contacting AWS, by creating a quota request here itself. So here itself, I can select that one, this option. I can select this option, request quota increase. So if I request by clicking this one, let's say I say 200. Now how many buckets I can create once that AWS will approve this request? 200. So like this, you have some limits. So what is the default limit of S3? How many S3 buckets can be created? 100. It's a soft limit. If required, we can increase the quota. Now, this is also asked in the interview. Now, what is the file size, or what is the max file size in S3? What is the max file size in S3? Which means, what is the size of the file which we can upload maximum to S3 bucket? That is 5 TB. What is the meaning of 5 TB? It's a 5000 GB. 5000 GB of file. Is it a complete S3 bucket limit? Is this 5 TB is a complete S3 bucket limit? No, it's not a complete S3 bucket limit. It's the individual file. It's the individual file, single file with 5 TB. Suppose I have one file which is having more than 5 TB. Will I able to upload to S3? No. It's not a soft limit. It's not a soft limit also. But 5000 GB of single file, in my complete IT experience in last 13-14 years, I never saw a single file with this much size. It's very huge. So minimum size, it can be 0.1 KB also. 0.1 KB also. Guys, when you are creating S3 bucket, are you setting any size for that S3 bucket? Which means when you are creating S3 bucket, are you defining the size of the capacity of that S3 bucket? No. Here I am talking about the files which you are uploading. So can I upload file if it is 0.1 KB or 1 MB, 2 MB, 1 GB, 200 GB, up to 5000 GB. But if the file size is more than this much, will I able to upload to S3? No. Generally, these type of questions are asked in the interview. If you observe the interview questions, whatever we are sharing frequently and whatever is asked in the interviews for our previous batch students or previous to previous batch students we are sharing, did you guys observe any time these type of questions? They're asking these type of questions for an interview perspective. Okay. Is everyone clear? What is the max file size of S3 individual file size? Suppose if I have 1000 files and each file is 1000 files and each file size, individual file size is like 4000 GB also, is it possible for me to upload all these 1000 files to S3 bucket? Each file size is this? Yes. But how they are going to charge? On which basis they are going to charge? They are going to charge based on the file size, based on the file size which we are maintaining or storing in S3, based on the file size. Per GB, they are going to charge some amount based on the file size and based on the storage class. What is the storage class? I will explain later. What is the storage class? I will explain later. Based on the size of the file, based on the storage class, they are going to charge. Now I created a bucket. Within this bucket, if required, can I create a folders also? Within this bucket, if required, can I create a folders also? Subfolders, folders. Can I maintain the files in that folders also? Yes. Now I am uploading a file. So this process, how I am uploading file to S3, is this S3 is mounted with any server to read and write the data to this S3? No, not required. I can upload using GUI CLI also. Guys, if I want to upload from one of the EC2 instance, now I want to upload or download files from one of the EC2 instance. How can I do that? Sometimes in the interview also they'll ask, right? Now I have this EC2 server. Let's say I have this EC2 server. From this server, I should be able to access the files which is there in S3. What can be done? Can I use these CLIs, or can I write some code like Boto script? Using Boto script also, by executing that Boto script from that server, will I able to upload, download files from S3? By executing AWS CLI commands also, will I able to upload, download files from that S3, from that EC2 instance, by installing AWS CLI or by executing Boto script? Yes. That I will explain later. That when I go for a AWS CLI, I will explain later, because you need to be aware with IAM also. What is IAM? Why we need IAM also? You have to be aware. So that time I will explain how we can upload or download files from EC2 instances from S3. But I will use AWS CLI because I am not covering all these things. I'm just given an overview. I'm going to explain AWS CLI. Boto, Terraform is out of our syllabus, out of our topic, out of our scope. I just gave an overview. Even though you are not learning, at least you have a good amount of knowledge. What is what? Now I am manually uploading using console GUI. I am going to S3. I am going to S3. I am going to upload file. Again, if you see, what is the max of file size which can be uploaded using GUI? From GUI, from this console. If you see, 160 GB. If it is more than 160 GB, then what they are saying? How can you upload? They are saying use AWS CLI or SDK or API. API. If it is more than that one. Now I am just uploading very simple file. Clicking on this add files. I'm uploading some file. Maybe I'm uploading this Mithun Technologies logo, something like this. I'm uploading this one. Now, the moment I upload that file, do I have one file here in my S3 bucket? I can go to this bucket. This is my bucket. So do I have one file in this bucket, one object I can say? Now, if you see this object, I'm clicking on that object. Is it having some URL? We call it as an object URL or endpoint. So if I have this URL, will I able to access this object from anywhere, even from application code also, like HTML code or any code? Can I refer this? Yes. Before we proceed further, S3 is for what type of purpose or what type of data we can use, we can store in S3. That is very, very important. So S3 is a perfect place. S3 is a perfect location place to store application related what static files. What is like meaning of static files? Like images, documents, documents, audio files, video files, that like MP3 files, MP4 files, if you have any, etc. And also S3 is a perfect location to store logs, store application related logs, log files, application related log files. So S3 is a perfect place to store application related static files like images, documents, MP3, MP4, etc. Because can it be referred anywhere without maintaining? Yes. These are static. These are static, which we can access from anywhere. Now, let me tell you one best example. Everyone will use, this Netflix. What is that Netflix, guys? Everyone will use Netflix. At least even though you are not using, at least you are aware about Netflix. What is Netflix? Netflix application. It's a OTT platform. It's a OTT platform. Now, actually, Netflix is hosted in AWS. What is the meaning of hosted in AWS? Is Netflix infrastructure, is Netflix application is running in AWS? Yes. So Netflix is hosted their application. Netflix has deployed their application in AWS. They are leveraging all the AWS services, whatever is required for them. So which means they are leveraging EC2 to host that Netflix application, dynamic application. They are leveraging AWS ELB to load balances, to load balance the applications. And they are also using S3. They are also using S3 for what purpose? To maintain the static files like audio files, video files, images. Because I'll tell you the reason. Now let's consider this. This is your AWS cloud, let's say. And let's consider these are your availability zones. These are your availability zones in that AWS VPC. So this is your application server. Let's consider this is Netflix application server managed by Netflix. So it is going to use some block storage. Now In real time, are we going to have multiple application servers where you will deploy your application? Are you going to deploy in a single server in actual applications? No. You are going to deploy multiple, and let's consider they have deployed like this. Just to give an example, they may have even 10 servers, 20 servers also based on the load. Now, let's consider this is their source code. This is their source code. Netflix application. Actually, Netflix is using microservice architecture. So what is microservice? What is monolithic? Again, I will explain later. Now, they have created a package. Let's consider for now, they are not using Java. I am not sure what programmatic language they are using to develop that Netflix application. I am not sure because I never part of Netflix. I'm just giving as an example. Suppose this is a package. Is it possible for Netflix to maintain all the images, all the video files, audio files of that application, whatever we are streaming as part of that application package? Is it possible? Is it possible to maintain in the application package itself? Sorry, guys. Is it possible to maintain in the application package itself? No. Actually, earlier, before we were using cloud, where we used to have this static content of our application, it is not part of your application package. We used to have that static content in the web servers. That web server alias load balancer. The static content will be served from web servers to the end users. The static content. What is the meaning of static content? Kind of a HTML, JSS, like images, video files, audio files will be coming from web servers, but dynamic content will be served from where? The dynamic content will be served from application servers. Earlier it used to be like this. Now, if you understand, if I try to maintain all the files as part of application itself, if I try to deploy that application in this server, and in this server, do I have a duplicate of those static files? And is your application package will be very huge? It will be in terabytes also, because you are maintaining lot of application files, static files. Will it be easy for you to maintain all the static files of your application along with your application package? You are duplicating. At the same time, your package is very huge. I don't need all these things. Now people started using different approaches. Now the dynamic content will be part of your application. Can I maintain all these static files if I am using cloud? Can I maintain all these static files in S3 bucket? Can I maintain all these files in S3 bucket? That static files. Does this applications can read and write the data from S3 instead of using this storage like a EBS storage of that server? Instead of using EBS storage of that server, can all these applications can try to get upload read files from S3 if I am maintaining in S3? Yes. Now if required, do I have a duplicate of my application static files in each and every application server? Only dynamic content is part of your application. Can I maintain all my static files in S3 bucket, like images, videos, audios, documents of my application? Yes. Now when end users are accessing dynamic content will come from this application server. We will have a load balancer again here, that we call it as a ELB. End users will access that application via load balancer. In AWS, we have a service called ELB that we will discuss. So this ELB will distribute the load. The CLB will route the traffic to your application servers. It is not Nexus. Like just to give an example, Netflix. I have kept like this. So this is how you have hosted. Now your dynamic content will come from here. Suppose this image, whatever I am maintaining in S3, can I use this image in my application code like HTML? Can I point to this URL in my HTML code as a developer? As a developer, HTML developer, can I use that URL in my HTML code as a developer? In my HTML code, can I refer something like this? Image source is this one. So is it going to render that image and show to the end user if the end user is accessing this application? Now this application code, this is source code. This is source code. That source code is part of your application server. That source code is part of application server. That is coming from your application. But when it is rendering that page, is it going to load that page from S3? Is it going to get that that image from S3? Is it going to get the image from S3? If I do like this, do I really need to maintain that image in each and every server where my application is hosted? Not required, right? Suppose end user is uploading some file. Request goes to application server using AWS APIs. Within this code, does developer can use AWS APIs to upload whatever end user is uploading some file? Can this code using APIs, can it upload to S3 bucket instead of storing locally in this server or in this server or in this server? Can it upload using APIs to S3 bucket? Again, if any end user is uploading some file. So can I use S3 as a storage to store my application related static files? Like application images, videos, documents like this. Did I really mounted my application servers with S3 to read and write the data to S3? No, not required, right? So we can use APIs, CLIs, or object URLs like this also. This endpoints also like this. We can access. So that's why it's a perfect place to store all your application related static files, because Netflix has a terabytes of data, petabytes of data, like lot of videos, audios, images. Is it easy to manage all those things in a normal storage like this? Not possible. So that's why they are using S3. If you see Netflix, I'm talking about this application, Netflix. So where this is hosted, basically this application is hosted in AWS, but whatever images, whatever videos we can see in this Netflix, it is serving from S3. Now let me see if I can inspect this one. Let me see if I can inspect this source. Now if you see, do you see there is a they have something like this. So what is this endpoint? Basically like this they have alias, like this they have alias. So this is my bucket name, right? It is like a similar to that assets.netflix.com. So they are pointing to some S3 bucket. Is that images are directly served from S3 instead of your application servers to the end users? Yes. So that is how we can use. If you see this Netflix architecture, you can see Netflix architecture. It is referred for multiple applications, guys. Netflix architecture. So they are using AWS. Netflix is running on AWS. If you see, they are leveraging lot of services. They are leveraging lot of services. Let me open some document like this. If you see, they are using EC2 instances, they are using load balancers, they are using lot of other stuff. If you see, they are using load balancers, they are using S3 buckets, they are using RDS, they are using S3, they are using EC2, they are using load balancers, like lot of services they are leveraging in Netflix. I'm just referring this one so that you can understand. So S3 is used to store and retrieve the static data of that application. And what is the another use case? As I told, S3 can be used for also maintaining logs, log files of your application. And one more use case. Suppose you are using Terraform. Suppose you are using Terraform. In Terraform, do we have a state file? Terraform state file. If you have already went through the basic recordings, whatever we have uploaded in our YouTube channel, you might understand. So Terraform will have some state file. So I have a Terraform script, let's say. I'm trying to run the Terraform script from one of the EC2 server. It is going to maintain one state file. Now, this is AWS admin one laptop or system. I have another AWS admin, let's say, or I have a Jenkins server also. Let's say I have a Jenkins server also. Now, this is one AWS admin. This is another admin. This is another admin. Now I have a Terraform script in version control system. Now the developer, this admin one, got those Terraform scripts and he has executed Terraform init. So it is going to check the state file first to check whether that infrastructure is already provisioned in the cloud or not. Suppose he executed and you are maintaining the state locally, local state, not remote state, remote backends for this Terraform. So he has executed like this. Is it going to create an infrastructure in AWS, whatever has been planned in the Terraform script? Yes. And again, the state file is part of local. It is going to create a local state file by default, that state file. Now this guy may be executing again same thing. He is doing the same thing, Terraform init. But the state is part of local file. Now, when this guy is executing, since this Terraform doesn't have a state, whatever is already created, is it going to again create? If this guy is doing, is it going to again create the infrastructure? Because the state file is part of local system. This guy doesn't have a state file. So again, is it going to create? If this guy is doing the same again? Yes. So will it cause issues in a distributed systems when multiple teams are working, multiple people are working? Will it cause any issues? If this guy is doing the same and this guy is also doing the same, it will cause the issues since you are maintaining locally. Suppose if this is also getting executed, then same problem. So instead of maintaining the Terraform states locally, can I use S3 buckets, S3 as a backend to maintain the state of my Terraform files, state files, not script, state files? Can I use S3 buckets to maintain the state files? So in your Terraform script, you can mention something like this. In your Terraform script itself, you can mention something like this, backend Terraform script. You can mention something like this. In your Terraform script, you can mention something like this. So Terraform backend is some S3 bucket in this region. Now, if your Terraform script is using backend as S3, whether this guy is running the script, whether this guy is running the script, or your Jenkins is running the script, is it going to get the state file from that S3, and is it going to again upload that state file to S3 instead of local state file? Because I have configured S3 as a backend for my Terraform state. So instead of maintaining that state file locally, now is this Terraform is going to use remote state file from S3? So if this guy has done first, is it going to create a state file and maintain in S3? If this guy has executed this Terraform init first, it will create a state file and upload in S3. It will create an infrastructure and it will maintain the state. What is the current state of that infrastructure? Again, if this guy is trying to execute, is it going to get that state from, is it going to refer the state here? If there are any changes with actual infrastructure and with your script, then it will update. If there is no changes in your Terraform script, your resources has not been updated, is it going to again create that infrastructure if we are using remote state like S3 as a backend for Terraform state files? No. So we are using for this purpose also. So can I use S3 buckets as backends for my Terraform state files if required by defining in my Terraform something like this? If I don't define this as a backend in my Terraform script, what is the default location? The state files will be created locally. But when multiple teams, multiple people are working, is it a best option to use local state files? It will cause into issues. So that is where remote state comes into picture. So if I want to use remote state, can I use S3 if I am using AWS? Can I use GCS buckets if I am using Google Cloud? Can I use Azure Blob Storage if I am using Azure? So for this purpose also you can use S3. Sometimes in the interview they'll ask what is S3, for what purpose you have used S3 in your project. If required, can you explain this one? One of the team is using Terraform to create a infrastructure. They are using S3 buckets to maintain the remote that state of the Terraform using remote backends. Sometimes in the interview they'll ask what is S3, for what purpose you are using S3 in your application. Will you guys able to explain whatever use cases I have explained? You can maintain application static files, you can maintain logs also, or you can use S3 as a remote state file to be maintained in Terraform. First of all, why? That is important. Is everyone clear why S3, how S3 works? Okay. Now I just uploaded one file. I have not mounted this one with any server. If I know this endpoint, can I access this from anywhere? But what is the default behavior? Why I am not able to access? What is the default behavior? I have given that object URL. So why, what error you are getting? What error you are getting? Access denied. Access denied. So even though it can be accessed from anywhere, do I have a control on the permissions? I am saying S3 can be accessed from anywhere. S3 can be accessed from anywhere, but at the same time, do I have an option to configure security of the objects which is in S3, who can access, who cannot access? So you don't have access as of now. No one has access. I am trying to access what it is saying. I'm trying to access from my laptop. What it is trying to say? Access denied. Access denied. If you remember, while creating a S3 bucket, there was one option. I said I will explain later. So what was that option? It was selected by default, public access denied. That option was selected as a public access denied. So that's why, is everyone able to access that object which is part of that bucket? Is public is able to access? No. If required, can I make it public so that anyone can access from anywhere? Yes. Now, let me go here, go to permission section. If you see, let me go to bucket. I am going to bucket. If I go here, I have a file. And here there is an option called, I am in object now. I am in the bucket. I selected that object. Here there is an option called make public. But is it enabled, that make public option on this object? Is it enabled? No. Why this is disabled? Because first, do I need to manage permissions at a bucket level? Do I need to enable at a bucket level first? Then object comes. So let me go to the bucket. Let me go to this bucket. Now bucket permissions. So here, if you see, what is the default behavior? Block public access. Is it on? Which means, is it blocking all the public access? Yes. Now, let me click on this edit. I will unselect. I'll unselect. I'll unselect this. Block all public access. Save changes. I'm confirming. Now I have enabled public access at a bucket level, but still, am I able to access this object? No. Here, that I can do in the bucket level, object level. Let me go to the objects. Let me go to the objects here. But still this is not enabled. Still this is not enabled. I will tell you the reason. Now S3 has added a lot of features. Why this is disabled, I will tell you in some time. Still this is not enabled, that button, because let me go to bucket, again permissions. I enabled public access, but here, do I have some other option? Some other options here. Access control list. There are, what is access control list? I will explain. So here in the object ownership, what they're saying, ACL is disabled, access control lists are disabled. Since the access control list is disabled, am I getting that option make public using ACL in that object? No. So I can click on this ownership. I can click on this ownership. There are two things, ACL disabled, ACL enabled. So why there, what is the default one and what is the recommended one? What is the default one? They have disabled this access control list. So the default one is disabled access control list, and this is also recommended. Why this is recommended, I will tell you tomorrow. But for now, I will enable this ACL. Why this is recommended, I will tell you tomorrow, because we are already little late. So I am, for now, I am enabling this one, this ACL in the object ownership. I am enabling this one. I have to acknowledge this one. Let me enable. Now I have enabled that ACL. ACLs are enabled now. Now, can I make that object public? Now, because access control list is enabled, can I see that option, make public access using, ACL is enabled, because I have enabled ACL. I'm making this public now. I'm making this public. Now I made this public. Now, if you see, are you guys able to access that object from anywhere, from even your laptop also? Yes. So this is public access. So the way we have a public access, we have bucket policies. We have bucket policies. What is bucket policy? What is ACL? Why we need to disable ACL? I'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow also we will continue with S3. There is a lot of topics like versioning in S3, versioning in S3, replication in S3, object lifecycle in S3. So I'll continue that tomorrow. ACL is enabled at bucket level or object level. First, I have enabled access control list on a bucket level. Then I need to manage the permissions at an object level if I am using ACL. If I am not using ACL, there is a different way of managing the permissions that I will explain tomorrow. Okay. So whatever has been discussed, try to practice. I'll continue tomorrow, guys. Tomorrow also I will discuss S3. Once S3 is done, I am going to start a very important topic called VPC. Tomorrow I am going to start VPC, very important topic. VPC is all about networking. So that is very important. I'll continue tomorrow after S3. Thank you. We'll see you tomorrow. As I again repeating, try to make sure you are attending all the sessions without missing any session. Even though you have some personal emergency, I understand you may not feeling well, or someone in your home is not keeping well. You can take 1 or 2 days off, but whenever you have time, go through the recording before you appear for a next class. So that you can understand all the topics and all the DevOps lifecycle flow and all those things. Okay. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow.